Hi, it's Kamon Reynolds, and Laurel and I are in the bee yard checking colonies, dropping some treatments, and feeding the bees that need it. We have a little bit of a flow going on, but it's mostly pollen. We finally got back up to normal temperature. It's about almost 90 degrees today, and it definitely feels humid. And we're seeing yellow pollens come in. I think they're bringing in maybe a trickle of nectar, but it's definitely not enough. But look at this right here. All of this is the paper from the oxalic acid glycerin strips Laurel and I put in maybe 10 days ago. And some people have asked me a lot about the oxalic acid strips like the Varoxan, because different colonies react differently, and I think there's a lot at play here. First of all, check this out. Yeah, that's a big colony right there. So they're going to wear through strips more likely than not faster than a single would. But it also depends on what's going on. If there's a strong nectar flow, if there's a strong pollen flow, I typically see where the bees don't tear the strips up near as quickly. But right now we're in a dearth of nectar, and when we got cold about a week ago, they weren't bringing in much pollen during that time. I don't think the plants liked it that much. And so the bees just had nothing to do but propolize everything down even more for us, thank you, and also rip those strips apart. And some people are like, man, am I going to get the effectiveness, the efficacy of those strips? And I think yes. So let's think about some bee math here. The average worker goes a 21-day gestation cycle from the time that it's laid to the time that it emerges as a bee. So not all of that is a capped period. 9 days of that actually is not a capped period. It's open it's as an egg or a young larvae, and then they cap it as it goes through its metamorphosis. So the window that we really need to crush the mite population is technically a much smaller window than many of us think. So my thoughts are, okay, they shredded through that a lot quicker, but my bees were exposed to a lot of oxalic acid over a short period of time during which mites were exposed to it. I personally haven't seen a lot of difference. I'm not a scientist, but we've used oxalic acid strips for the last couple of years, and I love the things. They're not perfect. They're not the only treatment that I use, but if I use them early in the year, I don't have to do near the cleanup later in the year. My bees look like this. I credit a decent bit of this to crushing mites early, and a gentle treatment like the oxalic acid glycerin strips are really helping with that, because they don't disrupt the colony, at least not where I can visibly see it. I'm sure it has an effect. It's just not that great. And so the thing of it is, this colony's been split. I just split this thing a couple weeks ago. Let's get into it a little bit more. So when I have a lid like this, you really want to watch, make sure the queen's not up here. And what you could do is shake them in, or a lot of times, let them run in if you don't see the queen. I've cheated and already looked at the lid before the video. You think this is all just fly by the seat of our pants, but some of it is. But I wear size like 29 waist. I can't get a whole lot of hang time with a pant size that big. I have to borrow somebody else's. All right, Laurel's shaking her head disapprovingly. I'm going to try to do better. So as you can see, we have a frame feeder up here. We fed them the last time we were over here. And just look at this third box of foundation. These bees are so healthy. I never could do this in the past because I wasn't controlling my mites early enough, and I didn't have as uniform of colonies as I do now. And you know why that is? Great queens, dead mites, and good nutrition. We have a lot of young queens in our yard. Most, I'd say 90-something% of our queens are this year's queens. It's just an advantage having young queens that just have got to lay. And so that's really helpful, but we're also feeding a lot better. We're getting into these colonies, and some of them need it, some of them don't. And so as we're going through, maybe drop a pad of formic acid if we see where we need a little bit more. Then, while we're doing that, we're going to pick up these boxes. That doesn't have a whole lot of weight in it. That does have some weight. And now we're going to go to this second box right here. And let's see what's going on. So a lot of this is comb. Old comb, excuse me. And then we have some foundations that are getting drawn out right here. Man, what a problem to have. I love it. So you can see where I've just thrown a couple of the foundations down below. and they're doing a great job of it. Gotta get a little bit more work done in there. I'm kind of hoping this goldenrod will kick into high gear. Oh man, look at that brood pattern right there. You know, I see this, even if it's not the whole thing, I see that and I know we're in good shape. There's another thing we're looking for here, and it's the uniformity of the cappings. When bees are sickly, whether it's viruses, mites, European foulbrood, anything that's a stressor, even if it's a nutritional stress, the cappings do not look as uniform. Now, if it's an older comb, it's going to look darker than this because they take some of the wax away from other areas. This is one thing that you'll notice if you take some really old combs and you put some brand new foundations in there and they draw it out, those foundations get darker a lot quicker because bees do move wax around. They don't reuse all of the wax, but they move it around quite a bit. But if you're seeing a uniform capping, that is what I want to see this time of the year. And people keep commenting, they just don't know. They're like, Kamon, you got a queen cell right here. This is the problem. You know, look, there's an egg in there even. I'm not worried about that. We have probably 20 to 30 of those in this hive, and sometimes the queens lay in them. It happens a lot. But when the bees aren't ready to raise queens, they will cannibalize that egg or larvae. But if they feel like they need a superseed or if they want to swarm, they will keep it. And so it's not unusual to see that kind of stuff. All right, that looks really good. You know, I don't need to see any more than this. The bees that have a good pattern, that are drawing foundations, they're healthy bees. This doesn't mean that the mite population is low. We've done several treatments, and we are going to do some alcohol washes soon. I might even get a couple people to join me for that, and that will be just like Tom Sawyer getting all of his buddies to whitewash the fence. Boy, you're really missing out. Look at all these bees. So we split this. I mentioned that earlier. Whew. That's really not good for your back right there. There's better ways to do that. Should have stuck it right there. Oh, better get this lid back on. Give them a few seconds. So if you'll look right here, I have this colony, and it's decent in its own right. You can see the fancy plugging I did. This is a really old super right here, and I had 2 queens in that hive. And I was like, dadgummit, she went through the excluder. Well, no, a virgin must have either, sometimes a virgin from another place will fly into a colony. Maybe they raise their own. I don't know. But all I do know is that a virgin went through the excluder. I still got a marked queen in that one. And she's laying beautiful patterns in these 2 supers right here. So I put on a deep of a drawn comb and a little bit of a frame feeder. And this is at least a strong 10 frames of bees. But I'm trying to get them out of these mediums right here because that's just not the way we run our operation. So that box had a lot of space, and I didn't want them to get robbed out because they lost all the forager bees. The foragers stay with the original colony. Plug this up, and hopefully we'll get most of the brood by winter time in this box right here, and we can put it on a pallet. And if we need to, we'll add some brood from a couple other colonies, but I don't really think so. It's looking really great. So what a crazy big colony that was right there. And we've got another one right here that we just put on another box of foundation at the same time we put this one on. Just too many bees here. Too many bees. And so I've got more. These are just old frames we've had for years, and you know, something was wrong with the combs. Maybe there's some damage, or who knows what was going on. We decided to clean them up and put them back in the hive, and they'll hopefully be used for several years to come. Look where when we were storing these, some ants tunneled through the foundation in this one place, and look how the bees don't like that. I think they're building around it. I think they're eventually going to do it, but they're definitely like, those nasty ants, man. Wish this beekeeper would take better care of his stuff. Why do we have to get that? But so they're already up here drawing this out. This is awesome. So you're probably wondering, Kamon, are you going to run them as 3 deeps through the winter? No. I know my bees, they typically cluster. If they're really healthy like these, they're going to probably have about 9 to 10 frames of bees when it's an ideal condition. That's after all the die-off. We're talking like December clusters. and that is prime. You can't hardly kill a cluster like that unless they run out of food or they get rained on. And sometimes if they get a little rain in the winter, they'll still survive. They're so strong. This is Tennessee, by the way. This isn't the north. So these big colonies will do great. So we'll condense this down to a double deep in that situation. Now, if we come across a colony and it only has maybe 5 frames of a good cluster, we'll condense it down to a single, and we'll store the equipment. The main thing at that time of the year, I don't have to worry about wax moths or small hive beetles, because we'll pull these off on a 50-degree day in November or December. We get plenty of those. So we don't have to worry about wax moths, but we do really have to worry about mice. Mice. So much damage. So you can just get some hardware cloth, just something like a number 8 mesh, something those mice can't get into, and stack it on top of that. You got to make sure those mice can't get into it. I can't tell you how many frames and how much damage we've had from that. But what an amazing amount of bees right here. I'm really liking these Hilco lids. I did add the rims, and it really gives me a lot of space up here to be able to manipulate things, whether it's adding a treatment, whether, you know, it's thymol, or something along those lines. A pollen patty is a big one. I'm going to feed some of these bees pollen patties going into the winter. Is it necessary? Probably not, especially on the biggest ones, but I think it's worth the investment. If I gain just a little bit out of it, it's going to really help me next year have the best bees that I can. And that's why I do it. It really is a supplement to just push it. And in a bad year, it makes a massive difference. In a good year, it doesn't make much of a difference at all. But I still invest into my bees anyways, so that when I get to them in February, oh, there's a nice basket right there of the real stuff. When I get in February and these bees are brooding up, I've got 3 to 4 frames of brood going in February, and I'm going to have to split these things in March, or I'm going to send bees into the woods. So we're just doing general stuff. I'm just going through, picking them up, and if they're really heavy and don't have a lot of space, we'll probably pull a frame of honey from them and give it to one of the weaker ones. We don't have a lot of weak colonies over here, just ones that are light. And then we have our feeding rig on the truck, and we'll add whatever we feel like we need to. On a colony like this one, I know my season, my fall flow in Tennessee is typically around the 10th to the 20th, like where I'm actually getting nectar. I can get a little bit before then, and I can get a little bit after then. But a lot of times the fall flow nectar is like a 2-week rush if the weather cooperates. And these big hives, if it's 4 days, they get all of it when they're this size. Hopefully it's longer, but I want to be really careful, because if I gain 30 pounds of just nectar on the fall flow, and then you add the pollens as well, these colonies can plug out. But I do want them to keep drawing that foundation. The last thing I want to do is have 2 or 3 weeks from now with no nectar, and I'm not feeding, and guess what they're doing? They're picking the wax off of the foundation where they haven't drawn comb, and now they won't do that ever until I recoat it. And so I'm going to probably put about a half of a feeder here, and that's a gallon. What we're feeding is a little under 1 to 1. And then any of them that are super light, I've got one over there. I mean, it is quite light. We're going to be filling it all the way up, and we've already done that 2 times in the last 10 days, and they're looking really good. But we need them to be fat. And then especially at the end of September in Tennessee, I'm getting into my bees, and it's still plenty warm to feed sugar syrup, but we want to start going to 2 to 1 ratio with the Pro Sweet. Makes it very easy when you're using a syrup, because I just add a little bit of water. Super easy to mix. You can feed Pro Sweet straight, but I can't use my feeder rig when I'm doing it. And I do like the fact that the bees are able to manipulate that syrup a whole lot more, and there is some health benefits when it's diluted. But you can have still very good success with straight Pro Sweet. Late September, early October, feed. If it's a double deep colony, I want the top box full of food. And, you know, if we count some of the stuff at the bottom, some of the top doesn't have to be completely full. But I need a 50 to 60 pounds minimum for a colony like this. So a lot of stuff going on. Fall season is an important time of the year. It's critical. Get in there. If you need to get some last minute mite cleanups, get it done. Protect your bees. I know it's been a long season at this point. A lot of us kind of shirk our work. Ooh, look what I did there. But what we do now is going to really impact things. And I've been working hard all August, and now here through September, to have the best bees possible. I know I get long-winded on these videos, but I hope it encourages you to get out there and get in your bees. I do not agree. I do 20 years of experience has taught me, do not get complacent this time of the year. Get out there, take care of your bees, and enjoy the fall season. Yes, this is still robbing season. We have to be a little bit more careful, but we're getting there. And if we're quick, and ultimately, look at this. I'm just going to segue. Look at this. See that big gap in that box right there? Do you think these are robbing proof boxes? I don't think so. Not at all. If these bees want to rob these colonies, they can try, but you see how big these colonies are? These other colonies right here are no slouches either. Look at that. These bees aren't getting robbed, they're doing the robbing. So, almost all the colonies over here are like this. We condense colonies, combine them down. We do everything we can to keep things good. Keep ourselves in good queens, keep the mite loads low, keep them in feed, never let them get on their back foot. It's hard to fix colonies in summertime and in early fall. If they're on their back foot, it's very hard work. So we really try to keep that momentum throughout the season, and that comes from diligent beekeeping. Wow, look where they've tore through these strips. Whew. A lot of bee work still to do. Laurel, I'm going to take you out to dinner because you've done so many videos today. But folks, we really do appreciate Laurel taking all these videos because it really stinks when I try to do it by myself. So we'll see you all in the next video. And I've got a few bees that are saying it's time to go home. Go home, go home, go home. See you in the next video.